Good morning. It's the sixth Sunday of Easter, and we read the Gospel of John. As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. I have told you this so that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be complete. My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because a servant doesn't know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends, for everything that I have learned from my Father I have made known to you. You didn't choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit that will last, and so that whatever you ask in my name, the Father will give you. This is my command: love each other. We continue with the discourse of Jesus at the Last Supper, the farewell discourse to his apostles, detailed by the evangelist John. John doesn't include in his account of the Last Supper the institution of the Eucharist, but he includes the washing of the feet and what we read today, the institution of a new commandment, the commandment of love. The first thing that strikes us is that instituting a commandment is a divine prerogative. For the Jews, only God could give commandments to man. Moses received 10 commandments from God on Mount Sinai about 1200 years before Christ. Only God can give a commandment. Therefore, for Jesus to say, "I give you a commandment," means that he's putting himself on the same level as God. No man in the Jewish world could say to others, "I give you a commandment," because his listeners would clearly understand it as something that only God can do. What was the need to institute a new commandment if Jesus had already summed up the whole law and the prophets in the phrase, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength, and your neighbor as yourself"? What is the new commandment Jesus gives? The level of love to which we are called. In the Old Testament, the commandment was to love your neighbor as yourself. The measure of love was the love with which we love ourselves. In contrast, Jesus raises up the level of love to which he calls us, for it is to love one another as he has loved you. The word "as," in this case, in the Greek version of the Gospel, is kathos, which is an adverb meaning in the same way, in the same measure, according to, exactly the same way. Kathos is much more than an imitation of how I have loved you, or since I have loved you, you should love you also. Kathos in Greek gives this meaning: love one another with the same love with which I have loved you. So, what is specific to a Christian is not to love, but to love as Jesus did. And how did he love us? We can find the answer in the Gospel. No one has greater love than this, to lay down his own life for his friends. It's the highest level of love, of agape, the Greek word used in this passage, and which refers to the highest level of love, which consists in giving oneself to another without expecting anything in return, simply seeking the good of the other as other. Jesus calls us to express our love for our neighbor through gratuity, to do good without expecting anything in return. One of the greatest vices of our postmodernist culture is the tendency to lower the value of words. St. Augustine already said that things become debased with use. Consueta vilescum, he affirmed in Latin. One of the most devalued terms today is precisely love. It's often confused with a feeling and not considered as a virtue. Feeling is changeable, but agape is not a feeling, it's a decision, it's an action. A second idea about this gospel: we are called to fulfill this commandment. We are all included in this mission of love. No matter what we do, lawyers, administrators, businessmen, teachers, whatever field of society we are working in, our mission will always have to do with love. And there is no a unique way to manifest agape in life. Our mission will always be a concrete expression of love. If we looked at the lives of saints, for example, each one was different, but what they have in common is that all of them expressed love. St. Augustine, St. Thomas Aquinas, St. Francis of Assisi, St. Ignatius, St. Teresa of Avila, St. Teresa of Lisieux, Mother Teresa, St. John Bosco, Santa Maria Goretti, they were all different in personality, but each one manifested agape, love, in their own context. Today is a day to ask ourselves, how am I loving in my life? What am I doing to act out this agape? And if we want to go even deeper in this question, we can ask it to God. God, what do you want me to do to manifest my agape? To love is not a feeling, something that ends up inside us, but to seek an action, verb, the good of the other. And a third idea, Jesus says, I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. The word joy, rather than just gladness, refers to joy. In the Greek text, it says chara, which is much more than a feeling of joy. It's a state of rejoicing and complete satisfaction. The essential thing about chara is that it's not necessarily related to external circumstances, but rather it is a sober and a serene inner state that is combined with an undescribable inner peace. That's the objective, the purpose of Jesus in giving us this commandment of love. It's not to complicate our lives or to ask us for the impossible, to frustrate us. It is to lead us to the supreme inner peace. And that peace necessarily passes through dedication to others. The goal of life doesn't end in a mysticism of self-realization, in finding the peace of Zen, of not desiring anything, of not having any conflict. This is all very good, but it's not everything. There is more. The goal of life is to love. The final point is not me, but the other. Christian spirituality is always mission-oriented, oriented towards sending, towards putting love into practice, and then is when we find chara, joy. We know it's not easy. Who can love like this, with the same love of Jesus? No one. That is why Jesus has sent us, or will send us, at Pentecost, His Spirit, so that His love may be also within us, and then, yes, we can manifest it. To love as He has loved us means to learn to love others in their misery, to be able to reach their darkness, to accept to go and look for them in their night, to love without asking anything in return in the same way as Jesus Christ has done with each one of us. St. Paul says that the Spirit of God cries out within us saying, Abba, Father. This is precisely the goal of spiritual life, to experience that we are truly sons in the Son with a capital letter. What does this phrase, sons in the Son, mean? It means precisely to be able to love our neighbor with the same love with which the Son with a capital letter loves him. That is what we are called to do. Hans Urs Balthasar, a very important Swiss theologian of the 20th century, who died in June 26, 1988, just the day before John Paul II was about to appoint him cardinal, wrote, "We don't know who we really are until we discern what God wants us to do. When we find our mission, we find our identity. We have been chosen by love to bear fruits of love." And God bless you.